Yep. Yes, indeed. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday, July 29th, Solid Ground live stream number 78. And I'm glad to be here with Jenny Holland and Deborah Knox. Jennifer's away this week. We'll see her next week, I hope. And we have a lot of things to talk about. It's been a really active cultural, I was going to say news cycle, but I don't know what that even means. So cultural moment. Lots of things going on. We have the crazy Olympic ceremony, which I'm sure we have lots to talk about there, what that is, what's going on with that. The white women for Kamala. What a crazy thing that is. So we have a couple clips to show, a couple things to talk about. And then we have some viewer comments to read from the last several weeks. So Deborah, perhaps do you want to start with the intro to Solid Ground?
Sure. Excuse me. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or other authoritarian measures such as COVID mandates in their workplace, in university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for only $5 per month. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Thanks. Hi, Ninja Kitty. Thanks for being here. It's always great to have you. And Helena, hi. Helena says dumpster fire. It's a good metaphor.
Accurate.
And John Noonan says, I come to Solid Ground for a dose of sanity. Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to scrape together our sanity in these crazy times for sure. So where should we start? What do you want to start with? What's burning? Speaking of dumpster fires.
The world is burning.
The world is burning.
Do you want to start, Jenny, with yours? Because that was like our first thing that came into the transom.
Yeah, sure.
That's proper English.
Well, I mean, do you want to start with the Olympics and
Yeah.
the over the top opening ceremony, which offended probably billions of Christians and Catholics across the world. And I didn't watch the whole thing start to finish. I saw the clips that I think everyone saw, and they were patently blasphemous, I guess, and definitely satanic in their overtones. But one thing I did think about as everything, like the whole Twitter sphere and all of my socials kind of lit up with the word Satanist and Satan and all that, is that I do think it's worth mentioning that whoever the artist, the choreographer or whatever, producer who put it together, and the many people who participated, I don't think you should overstate and make an assumption that they're all like practicing Hail Satan types. What I think it probably is more likely to be is that the culture right now is it's hip and on trend to mock Satanist practice, or not mock, sorry, co-opt, the opposite of mock, co-opt Satanist practices, and use it as like a hip way of expressing art. It's basically a bunch of bourgeois artists trying desperately to be edgy. It's like the ultimate transgression. There's nothing more to transgress. Like, we've done overt sexuality, we've done homosexuality, we've done, if you think back on like pop culture and music and stuff like that throughout this, from the 60s, it's always been transgressive in one way or another. And this was sort of like the final frontier. So I really do think it's a bunch of very shallow, very coddled, very unwise, middle class, striving artists with grand ambitions to kind of like break the internet and like change culture. What they're playing, they don't understand what they're playing with. I don't think this gives them a pass. Like, to say they're maybe not overt Satanists, it doesn't give them a pass, but it is sort of, they know not what they do. I think it's a damning indictment nonetheless that our culture is so lacks any judiciousness, or lacks the good judgment to have people in these structures of culture to say, actually, no, that's not a good idea. Why would we want to do that? Especially for the Olympics of all things. I mean, it's one thing if you're putting on maybe like a very kind of edgy fashion house runway show.
Mhm.
Even that, not great. But this is the Olympics. This is supposed to be the best of the human ideals and the best of what humans can achieve. And to put a fat man look like rolling around on a sort of like a banquet table looking like a smurf is really a slap in the face to all of those ideals. It's the most ill-judged thing I've ever seen. I do think though that if you're just like still trapped in normie world, despite everything that's going on, and you hear these people saying it's Satan, you could very easily have sort of like, oh well, that's just those crazy moral majority types who have been setting their hair on fire since the 80s.
Mhm.
Um, and so, I'm not saying stop calling it Satanist. I mean, it is pretty Satanist. I just think that it's our degraded cultural discourse
Mhm.
as opposed to like maybe active Satanists. Although maybe I'm completely like maybe I'm being hugely innocent and naive, and they are actually all going down to a dungeon afterwards to like sacrifice goats. I mean, who knows?
That's really interesting. A couple of things that I think when in response to that is, one, I did hear somebody say the blue guy on the banquet table is really supposed to be Bacchus. And
Oh
so
yeah,
that's not even the same religious template. We're talking
right.
about, Greco-Roman old world religion at that point, or whatever. I don't know how you proto-Christian, pre-Christian
Pagan,
religion. So paganism.
pagan.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but also the Satan thing, I now I'm not I'm not Christian per se. I guess I'm like little C Christian, as my mom used to say, where you're not necessarily part of the Christian church. I've never been baptized, but I've certainly been raised with the Judeo-Christian values. I have, uh, anyway, I could go on about that, but I've already talked about that other places. But so I don't know how the Christian views Satan and Satanism. Sometimes it seems like it's a reactionary thing where everything that's not supporting Christianity is satanic. But my understanding is that there's kind of two kinds of Satanism. There's like the people who actually worship some kind of a deity, some kind of a devil deity, and then there's the materialist, just the do as thou wilt materialist, irreverent. We're just going to break down boundaries and put our middle finger up to everything spiritual and revel in the material, this hedonistic thing. So um I don't know if either of you are more informed than I am on this.
Well, my understanding, and if anyone knows differently in the live stream, like stick it in the chats. But my understanding is that "Do as thou wilt" is Aleister Crowley's
Hmm.
strapline,
Hmm.
and he was a actual Satanist,
Hmm.
devil worshiper,
Hmm. Hmm.
and a very sick person. That's from like the little I've read about him. So that I mean, I think, and I'm not a Christian either, although I'm far more drawn to the idea of Christian ideals than I ever was before.
Hmm.
Mostly because of this craziness, because I find the constant use of imagery pertaining to devils and S&M and all that stuff to be like really jarring, and it disturbs me, like it
Hmm.
disturbs my psyche. So that's pushed me toward believing in Christ, and what Christ stood for. I think materialism is sort of the predicate for allowing uh, demons and Satan in. I mean, this is all this. I hear these words come out of my mouth. It sounds crazy because I did not grow up with this worldview at all. In
Hmm.
fact, quite the opposite. Um, but yeah, but there. I mean, Satan being the enemy of God. He was one of God's angels who was cast out of heaven because of his pride. I think that's
Hmm.
how the story goes. Um, so I mean, we've lived in a materialist culture, like all of us, for our entire lives, and we know nothing. We know no different. So again, that's the groundwork where you think, well, what harm does it do? right? What harm does it do? Let's just wear devil horns and prance around in leather bondage gear. Even if we're morbidly obese, and like pretend to whip each other, and it's gonna be a grand old time, not realizing that you are actually you're touching upon forces that humans all humans of all time have always recognized to exist, which is evil and demonic evil. We're so shallow and we're so stupid in our materialism. We're so misguided and we're so innocent, really. We're innocent of these primal forces that have all peoples of all time, primitive, non-primitive, pagan, all religions recognize that there are dark forces, and you have to live certain ways in order to keep them at bay. We are certainly not doing that. And I'm not saying that as like, oh, I am a Christian, therefore I'm saying, demons are real and you have to be a Christian in order to avoid them. I'm just pointing to this anthropological fact that we in this time, like the West, the spoiled, materially rich West, has spent the last 100 years pretending that this isn't a thing, but it is a thing. It is a thing, and to use it in this flippant way, to use these imageries and these images in a flippant way, very unsettling, very wrong-headed. And I feel for the truly believing Christians, like the sincerely believing and very erudite Christians of all denominations, who are devastated by this, because it is such a slap in the face.
Build Baby Build with Ty King. Hi, Ty. Says it's meant to disturb Satanism, at least for my generation. And I think Ty's younger. I think 20s. Ty is a creative religious replacement. Most of these people don't believe in Satan, but that doesn't mean they don't take on satanic values, the highest being the desire to destroy God.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to follow your pleasure, just follow your whim, follow your pleasure. Don't care about any norms of any sort whatsoever, so that those boundaries kind of coming off.
That comment is spot on.
Yeah, Ty's 27. Thanks, Ty. Yeah, thank you for that perspective. I know it's interesting. At some point, does it matter really what the values behind the demonstration are? Like, if you're pretending to eat a baby, I mean, we know you're not actually eating a baby, but you're putting out into the world something that's pretty dark. You're putting that imagery out.
Exactly.
And I've seen a lot of apologists. It's interesting to watch people go, well, no, it wasn't really the Last Supper, or as though, and I'm like, this was meant to provoke people, right? Like whether you decided it was pagan or it was Bacchus or whatever the hell, like, it was meant to provoke regardless. So I find these sort of, even if it was this Dionysian thing, like that's an issue of itself too. It's like the Apollonian sort of Western reason, and then this just sort of libidinous, outpouring without any I think we need to have energies flow, our liveliness and all of that. We don't want to be in this like really repressive tight box that we can only think but it was sort of this abandon of anything Apollonian, and we might say Western, maybe. Right? I mean, I guess that was Western, but it's like
I had to wonder, what do people think of this? Like, if they have not had, I mean, I've seen the Olympic ceremonies over the last couple of Olympics, and I mentioned this the other night to Benjamin. I said, and the CERN, you remember the opening ceremony for the CERN Hadron Collider thing?
That was even weirder, actually.
Yeah, it was super weird. And it was all, I mean, he said, well, the CERN's totally different than the Olympics. And my way of tying them together is they seem similar to me, in that they're these massive, very expensive, global presentations that use art in order to celebrate something. It's performance art that's celebrating something that's supposed to be very reputable and international. And there was a ton of money and production that went into these productions, and a ton of production went into the production. Okay. But the ones that I've seen before, the Olympics and the CERN, they were weird, like really, really
They were even
strange.
weirder. Yeah,
Pretty
that was
weird.
very dark,
The
actually.
CERN one was the darkest, I think, but it was maybe a little bit lower level because it's not the Olympics, not everybody's watching it. But watching this last Olympics ceremony, this recent one, I thought, how can anybody anymore deny that there's something really strange going on? You can't just say that's art. That's a
Right.
message. That's a definite cultural message being sent, very loud and clear.
Do you know if there's
You know,
people, just really quick, I am
hold on.
curious about those of us who have been seeing these types of weird things out there. I am so curious about people who have not been exposed to some of the more trans madness or whatever. Like for us, it hits like, see how bad this is? It really, and I just wonder for the new viewer if they could discount it as a one-off weird
Yeah.
thing and
Yeah.
not know it's pervasive.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. So in 2012, I guess, was the London Olympics, and I was living in London at the time, and I watched the opening ceremony with my first husband, and um, I don't really remember it making I mean, I remember it. It didn't nothing I don't remember having any feelings of like, "Oh my god, that's so weird. What are they doing?" I thought it was kind of like cloying maybe because it was all based around the NHS, which is our public health service here, which is barely functioning. It's like holding on by a thread and it's not doing well at all. But it's like almost the religion of the United Kingdom. But looking back, because I was in normie world then, like I never thought about Satan back then. I'll tell you that much. Like it would not have crossed my mind. I liked Obama. I'm like a normal liberal, but looking back on the clips that were shared this week after the Paris thing, there's this bit of the ceremony when they're doing this whole thing for the NHS and like nurses, and they're pushing out beds with little kids in the beds, like and the nurses are dressed in like 1940s nursing uniforms, and then they tuck the kids in the bed, and then demons come out, these like huge
What?
puppets that are black, and maybe I'm slightly remembering, but it's basically these massive structures come out with like light, like red eyes, and start looming over the children, like their children, and actual children
Yikes.
acting, in their beds. And I'm like looking back, I'm like, how did I miss that? How did I not realize? And how did I not have a very strong reaction? My son was 2 at the time. Like,
Mm.
how did I not think like, what the F is this? What are these weirdos doing? But I don't remember having that experience at all. I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. It's like when you think everything is normal, you're not picking up on
Mm.
these, what I would now think are rather glaring signals, but they're not necessarily.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd like to see that. That sounds
It
Was
was
that supposed
very
to be disease? I mean, I don't know. What was that
I
supposed to
think so.
represent?
I
Like they're
think it
getting
was supposed
sick?
to be I think so. It must have been that must have been what I thought at the
God,
time. It was
the
like an
medical
artistic.
system is so corrupt. It's so lost its moral authority. And that's incredible that they're playing with
Yeah,
that kind of imagery too.
yeah. It was very weird.
Oh my goodness.
But
Okay.
I do see how when people like us are like, "Look, look, 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 this is so effed up,"
Mm,
um, normies are still like, "What are you talking about?" I don't, because I used to be that person. I did used to be that person.
hmm hmm Yeah, it's
And
good
then
to still
I
think
just see
about
the
that.
inclusive thing too. I mean, anyone trying to go, it's just trying to be inclusive and
Mm.
loving.
Yeah.
But it's the Olympics. It's the opposite of inclusive.
Yeah, it should be very exclusive. It's the Olympics, as you say.
Which is,
Should be the best of the
again,
best.
and the Bacchus Dionysus thing, that's not the right myth to pick.
Hmm
You pick Athena, or, like these people are like
And who had to
incredible
train?
disciplined,
Aries.
yeah, disciplined physical specimens, not fat drunks, you idiots. Like, I mean, I'm definitely of the fat drunk demographic, but like I'm not gonna present myself at the Olympics, you know what I'm saying?
It's not the couch potato audience.
All right. So next, white women for Kamala or the guy accosting people on the street. What do you guys think?
Costing kind of fits. It's
The
like as a
accosting.
transition.
All right.
Yeah,
Let me pull up
demons.
It's of a type.
the thing and I'll share screen. All right. Here we go, guys. All right, what are you seeing right now?
It seems towards the end of it.
Yeah.
This, you're seeing the video though? Okay.
I'll watch again. So you're at the
I'll-
tail.
Ran into me because you're a transphobe and you're having a bad life.
I have trans friends.
So why did you walk into me like that?
You're looking for problems and you're purposely
Am I?
antagonizing me.
Am I?
So I'm gonna give you a minute and then I'm gonna call the cops. Because you was going in that direction and now you're following me to this location.
Because you,
and I'm gonna stand
walked
here
into
for
me,
1 minute.
You antagonized me.
Okay, what's
and
your name?
You're a black woman calling a
What's
cops
your
on a
name?
trans woman. And I just want you to
What's
think.
your name?
I want you to think about that.
Okay,
You're a black woman calling a cops
Go ahead.
on a trans woman.
Continue to walk.
And I want you to think about that.
We're at 37
and
seconds.
I'm going to pray for you.
I'm going to hang.
Because I
I'm going to
pray-
stop recording at 1 minute, and I'm going to call the cops if you're still in my area. I haven't offended
You
you in any
hit
way.
me on the sidewalk
and you're
with your
following
body.
Me.
You hit me.
Honey.
It's not honey anymore, bitch. It's not honey.
All
It's
right.
not honey, bitch.
We're just going to patiently wait for the cops.
Yes, we are.
This is getting.
You're a hypocrite.
It's
You're a
getting a
liberal
little bit more
hypocrite. And
aggressive.
you're a bitch.
Okay.
Yeah, I am aggressive. I have PTSD, bitch.
Okay, I think that's probably enough to get the gist of that one. So when we were talking about this one, my initial thought was when I saw that was that it's kind of rage baity, and it can call up a lot of negative feelings for people watching it. And I tend to want to avoid rage bait because I think that there's enough of that out there. There's enough reasons for us to all get mad and have our anger confirmed. And I don't like to play with that. I try to avoid it because I don't want to experience that myself. I want to stay in a centered and loving place as much as possible. But Jenny, your approach to this was actually really compassionate. And so I thought that it was worth addressing and talking about, because we do see this person being really unhinged. And you can hear the woman who's recording. We don't know what happened right before this, but it's easy to sort of get the impression based on the behavior you're witnessing in the person being recorded and the tone used by the woman recording, that she probably accidentally bumped into him. And then he's chasing her down. Yeah, go ahead, Deborah.
I want to add a quick thing too, because other people, whether this is true or not, I'm sure, have posted on Twitter that same person has run into other people too and caused, like at Bloomingdale's and other things, like has caused altercations. So I think this wasn't a one-off.
Yeah, I had a weird reaction to that because I'm going to say something that's going to really irritate a lot of people. I feel really sorry for that guy. I really just, obviously I recognize that he's aggressive. He's unhinged. He is not a safe person to be around. But there was something about the way he switched like that. It came out like his true self came out so fast that to me, it was like, oh, okay, this guy isn't actually a practiced predatory manipulator. And you know what, if he goes off and like does something truly terrible and like I'm gonna have egg in my face, whatever, fine. I mean, he's obviously not well, and he's obviously he's obviously full of rage, but he flipped in such a way that kind of reminded me of a small child. And whenever that happens, I had that my female empathy gets triggered, which is something I criticize liberal women for all of the time, but I do also have it. I just see so much pain in his eyes, and I'm not excusing that. I'm not excusing his behavior. But it was really striking to me. Like, he's he says he has PTSD. He just seems to me like someone who suffered a huge amount of abuse, maybe in his own life. Again, completely making that up. That's just the sense I pick up from him, is that he's suffered, and he is a person who's lived. Well, I don't know. Like I said before, he did not win the genetic lottery. He's got those snaggly teeth, and he's trying, and he's trying to be this prim and proper chick, and to see it just evaporate. I mean, the embarrassment and the shame I feel for him He
Mhm,
probably
mhm,
doesn't feel it for himself because he's probably too far gone, but I feel embarrassed for him, which is
mhm.
what I feel often when I see these grown ass men who are stomping around wearing dresses and trying to look like chicks. Like, I feel so embarrassed for them that actually I feel sorry for them
Mm.
as opposed to rage. Now, if one was in my space or one was in my daughter's space or whatever, that would be a different story altogether. But when I see these videos passed around social media and everyone's like, I'm like, I just feel sorry for the guy.
Mm. Yeah, it's easy to feel for both people. Primarily, I felt for the woman in that scenario because she's being harassed by someone who is really behaving in an irrational and potentially dangerous
Yes,
way. Like she
yes,
doesn't know
yes,
what he's going to do, what he's going to say. When he whips his wig off, that's a moment
yes,
of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? Is he going to hit me? What is he
right,
going to do? And
totally.
so
It's
I
actually a very
really
frightening moment for her.
but I like that you're able to still see the humanity of the other person, even though his behavior is inexcusable. If there's he
Yes,
should be censured for that when even if it's just by calling it out. I don't know what the response is. I don't know if he did anything that's illegal, but he certainly is doing something that's socially reprehensible. Um, but yeah, you can see the difficulty regulating
yeah,
himself. And I think it was Ninja Kitty in the comments said, he's certainly walking around looking for a fight.
yes,
He wants trouble. He wants to have a conflict. It's like he's got so much conflict inside of him that he's
right.
looking for a way to play that out externally.
Well, I would love to know from the perspective of someone who's studied human psychology, which I haven't, like, men, actually, no, women and women too. I've seen girls like this. I've seen girls like this a lot, actually. Um, you see them on the street and okay, that person is full of rage and angry and is rangy like a feral animal. What's the sort of thing that leads a person to being in that state, male or female?
To being raging like that?
To raging like that and that sort of rangy looking for a fight, like you're
Oh,
like a feral animal. Like, what causes that a person to be in that state?
well, I would imagine it'd be a number of factors. I mean, it's hard to say. There's so much complexity to each individual, but um it there's a deep sense of inner conflict, dysregulation, emotional dysregulation, just um who knows what has happened prior to this event for this person, what is his living situation like, what are his social relationships like, does he have any kind of social network of people who really care about him. He's looks very conflicted on so many levels. I mean, even
He
just on the
does.
physical level, you see a person who is not trying very hard to present in a feminine way, but he shows some signs of either using hormones because he looked like he had some breasts, or he's using uh padding a bra. I don't know what's going on there, but there's some signs of feminization. He's obviously wearing women's clothes, has this wig, but then he very quickly whips that off. And then he's just a man, a balding
Screaming.
man with no makeup on either. I mean, he's not trying very hard. He's got sort of a feminine affect that he's trying to use in order to talk, but there's so much ambivalence with this person. There's so much conflict,
Exactly,
even just on the physical level,
exactly,
that the
exactly.
conflict is playing out inside, outside, and socially as well.
And I've seen that in 2 other viral videos of men, dressed up as women who explode in rage when they're,
Mhm.
identified as men. There was the famous "It's Ma'am" video,
Mhm.
remember that
Mhm.
huge guy?
Yep.
And then there was that other really famous incident where Ben Shapiro was doing an interview, like a panel discussion, and there was a man who said he was trans, and Ben Shapiro said, you're a man who's dressed up as a woman," and the guy went straight to masculine and threatened to send him home in an ambulance. So, like, that to me says so much about a certain segment of this trans rainbow, because not like, obviously the different categories are incredibly different from each other, and there's a particular type of extremely aggressive man that wants to pretend to be a woman And I know that obviously much of that is going to be driven by a sense of almost domination. Like it's like trickery, domination, and all sorts of terrible, terrible things. But I mean, am I just a totally soft-headed liberal? And I think, well, people who act that way because of really dark stuff that has happened to them in their lives. I mean,
Well,
again, not excusing it, not
mhm.
saying that this woman obviously came like
Yeah,
she
we
was
woke up in the
victimized
morning
by
and said,
him.
I want to be this way without any reason leading up to
Right.
that, right? Like
Right.
people just don't choose to go, I'm just going to
Right.
act crazy.
And
Well,
I
you see
think
people when they're struggling with cognitive dissonance, when they're struggling with their own worldview or perspectives being challenged from outside, if that is really close to their own identity and if it's really tenuous, then they can defend it really aggressively. I mean, we saw this with
yeah.
COVID, where people who didn't agree about COVID cut their families off. It's a human process. It's just playing out in another dimension here with these people. And when someone has, say, this particular person's perspective that he's trying to defend is, I'm a woman and I want you to see me as a woman, and I know on some level that I know that you don't see me as a woman, and so I am a walking conflict, because I both need you to see me as a woman and I also know you don't. So I'm ready to have that fight with anybody, and I'm going to defend that like I'm defending
Resistance.
my family. It's like he's got his mama bear going on for his own
For
perspective,
his own
and
fake woman.
for his own fake woman. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it was also very interesting in that how he tried to present it to her as like a hierarchy of woke identities. And it went over like a lead balloon. And it's just really like an instance of this disgusting, toxic, destructive ideology, identitarian ideology, how much it harms people. Like it harmed the woman because she was basically accosted and screamed at and made
Hmm.
to feel afraid by this complete psycho on the street. But it's also hurt that guy who was enacting what he has probably been told by by very malevolent forces. Oh well, trans is here and black trans is here and white trans is here and
Yeah,
so he
his
throws it in
intersectional
her face.
hierarchy.
Yeah, it he throws it in her face as if she, and it's very racist as well, like
Yeah,
assuming that because she's black, she should give him a pass or something. I mean,
yeah.
it's just, I mean, it's a BS thinking. It's muddled thinking. But this is the real life, living, breathing product outcome of woke. And
Hmm.
it does not only harm the actual victims, which in this case is the woman, but the perpetrators as well, because that guy isn't doing great. He's
Hmm.
not doing
No,
great. I can safely, I mean, I know I'm making some assumptions before, but like I'm confident making this assumption. He's not doing great in life. And
no.
he's grasping at this identity because he's been fed this noxious bullshit that like, oh well, if you just put on a wig and pretend you're a woman, everyone's going to be so nice to you because you're a victim. I mean, the guy probably was a victim already, you know?
Hmm.
It's just wild. Like I've never seen a better like 1 minute 37-second encapsulation of the absolute derangement of our culture than that.
I mean, that's what I have to say. And I know I was going to say it because I said to these women before, like, I actually thought he was a troll. So I know you guys really don't think so, but like, it was so perfect. I have PTSD. I mean, he just threw all the words in
Hmm.
there. And so
Hmm.
I found it like this, I think this guy's trolling. And I don't know. I mean, I could be completely wrong. And I think this discussion is really important to have about
Hmm.
the state of mind of these people and the concern about them and having the compassion and all of that. But I just like, as we're sitting here, like really, really concerned for him, it's like, it's so hard for me because it felt so fake to me. And it might not have
Yeah.
been. And I want to leave
That's
anybody that watches it to really
yeah.
have their own, how does it impact you and make your meaning yourself?
That's
Um,
really interesting, Deborah. I think that's so fascinating, because
Yeah.
maybe he is a troll,
Yeah.
like the
I don't know. I
Kayla
really don't
Lemieux
know.
in Canada, like the teacher with the big fake breasts, you know, trolling really hard. But maybe he's not a troll,
I'd
and
be very
if he's not,
disturbed.
what you're talking about right there, it just indicates how shallow some of this ideological programming really is. Like with the racial stuff, when I was in grad school and we're talking about this, I'm like, this is, how are you presenting this alongside serious psychological research. And in here, you're going to present this like white women their feelings are overvalued. So, like what is that? Like, really? Right next to all this person. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess it is a perfect segue. Let me pull up the next thing. Boom. Okay, gosh, this one is the one that really got under my craw here. I guess stuck in my craw. I'll use the correct metaphor. Share sound and let me know. Do you guys see the white women for Kamala right now? Kamala? Okay. So here we go.
Audience of over 1.5 million followers is here to help gentle parent us through this election.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am so honored to speak today. I am like shaking to just be among such incredible company. We are here because, as if you were here earlier, you've heard BIPOC women have tapped us in as white women to step up, listen, and get involved this election season. This is a really important time, and we all need to use our voices and influence for the greater good. No matter who you are all influencers in some way. So tonight, I'm going to share some do's and don'ts for getting involved in politics online and navigating the toxicity that comes with it. And spoiler alert, as much as the toxicity can come from the outside, it can come from us too. So first, don't isolate yourself. We can do our best work when we're in community together like we are tonight, because the toxic feels smaller when we support each other. But don't make it about yourself. As white women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes. If you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat. And instead, we can put our listening ears on.
Oh my God.
So
I can't.
Do learn from and amplify the voices of those who have been historically marginalized, and use the privilege you have in order to push for systemic change.
Okay.
We can handle watching the whole thing.
I can't. I just can't. So I don't want to call out this person. She's I don't know who that is. I'm not trying to call her out. I'm also not trying to call attention to any one particular Twitter account. These just happen to be the links that we pulled up in order to show these things. That is what a fascinating slice of sociology that presents. What is that? She is infantilizing everybody she's talking to. She uses the sing-song baby voice. She's sounds like
teacher. She later says, "I'm a kindergarten teacher," and we even teach the kindergartners.
She is a teacher.
Oh, yes, and they get political with the kindergartners.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yes.
So she's talking to these adult women the same way she would talk to kindergartners. I don't go along with people crapping on white liberal women. I don't do that either. That's identity politics from the other direction. I know too many women who are women, white and liberal and lovely, deep thinking, interesting people with a lot of complexity. So I don't like the idea of painting everybody with one brush. I don't like that awful term, the what is it, affluent white female liberal. Yeah, I don't like anything about this kind of racial stuff, but the tone there, that's incredible. Jenny, you had some thoughts on that, didn't you?
Well, I found that on Twitter as well, that she is a kindergarten teacher with like a huge TikTok following or something. And she does, I think her shtick is she makes TikToks of her talking to like either Trump or MAGA people in her kindergarten teacher voice.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, I agree with everything you just said so much, Leslie, about white liberal women and well-off women. Like my friends, my relatives, I love these people. Okay. It's a very weird, complex situation to be in. But this weird infantilization and this condescension masks, in this instance, again, I'm not talking about my friends. I'm not talking about my family members. There's a lot of caveat. But this type of, this mode of being masks a truly sinister, controlling malevolence that I think should be called out. I think it should be ostracized. I think it should be, mocked mercilessly, because it's not about kindness. It's not about kindness. It's about you do what I say. It's like the Kathy Bates in Mercy.
Oh gosh,
No,
what was that movie?
where
I
she
don't
She has
remember.
somebody
Somebody
in the
else.
bed, or someone's
Yeah,
like
she
to
loves him
her.
so much that she ties him up and then she
Yeah.
smashes his feet with a sledgehammer. That is this character. This is like a female archetype almost. And it's been allowed to really infest institutions and bureaucracies and centers of power, and it has enormous cultural influence. So, and it's very, very damaging cultural influence. So on the one hand, you have a lot of the liberal white women, again, my demographic 100%, and they wouldn't espouse anything that sinister, but they will maybe roll their eyes or shrug or be like, "Oh, I know, isn't that silly? What a silly way of talking, but I get it. I get her point," right? So they'll kind of excuse it because they perceive her to be on the right side of history. All of this is possible because liberals truly do believe that Trump is Hitler. They really do. So it makes sense from their point of view that you would tolerate these absolute psychos. They would tolerate the condescension, and they would tolerate the obvious like manipulation that's occurring, where like you can say this, but you can't say this, and you can do this, but you can't do this, and all of that like really like toxic behavior. They tolerate it because they think it's in service to what is an existential fight. So I don't know what to do about that.
Might say even Trump aside. I mean, that's obviously an extra motivating factor, but and then I do want to give some context for how this call even ended up happening. But I just see the desire to be good, to be an ally, to be self-flagellating, to feel so guilty about privilege. So even Trump aside, like there's a huge amount of expiation, something like wanting to go on, and then they blended it because there were some quotes that were people that had listened to the entire thing, kind of linking activism with self-care, and this is self-love. So there's something weird even mixing this, I'm going to use my privilege and my platform, but it's also like a form of self-care and self-love. I mean, a lot of stuff is getting mixed in there, and the accelerant is Trump, the existential threat.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I do want to say, because it was sort of like, why is the campaign doing this? And it didn't come. I think they probably were like, great, do it. But it started with a call with Black women for Kamala. And then they got like, I actually wrote this down because I thought it was so interesting. They got like 44,000 people. The next day, Black men for Kamala, they did their thing. And so then Shannon Watts, who was from Moms Demand Action, the anti-gun group, was sort of like, oh my gosh, we need to do this for white women. So no one was like saying, go separate yourselves and go white people over there and other people. And then now there's the white dudes. Like, so then they came. So, and then there's an Asian one. There's Witches for Paris. That's an identity group.
Oh my gosh.
And,
okay.
But to me, like they got 200,000 women on this call, and they got 30,000 volunteers out of it. And I saw different figures. They either raised 1.8 or 8.5 million. There's a range in there. And but so much of it is like using our privilege. There's also the organizers went and asked a woman who was involved with the Black organizing call, you know, do you have any tips? And they said, don't ask Black women to give you insight, like figure it out yourself. It was that kind of thing we've heard about.
Course.
And then some speaker on the call said, your whiteness will not save you from what the patriarchy has in store for you. There's this vision of we are the saviors. Like I think it was Glennon Doyle said something that like, white women who step up and out and into the gap between democracy and fascism, that we will be the women who finally, something about we've saved the goddamn world. My handwriting is bad, but so there's this thing of like, we will be the heroines. We will be,
it's through subjugating ourselves that we raised ourselves up.
Yeah. And one person said, I felt like we all just went to collective therapy. So there's like so many needs kind of being met by the same. But what was interesting was it sounds like there wasn't anything really about her policies or anything. It was very much women and a fandom. There's like fandom politics going on.
You know what I think in light of all that and what you said, Jenny, about how do we work with this? What do we do? How do we talk to people? I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but kind of like, what do we do? I think my opinion comes back to that we have to recognize that these are processes playing out that we see in other people, that we do ourselves. We do them to some extent ourselves. Just like these people think Trump is literally Hitler. He's a lot of things. You could talk about a lot of things with him, but he's one person. He's not the embodiment of good, but he's also not the embodiment of evil. He's a person. He's a politician, like all politicians who have flaws and have, we don't like the other side, but the desire here, or the tendency here, to project all evil onto him dehumanizes him to the point where people say things like, oh, well, I wish they hadn't missed, or maybe next time. And then you get this polarization. And I think that the only way to fight polarization is to resist being polarized. Don't be reactive back. Recognize that you probably do that too sometimes.
Yeah.
That we do that too. We could sit here and have a bitch fest about white liberal women, and we're refusing to do that because we want to see the complexity in other people. And it's just like with the guy who took his wig off and was yelling at the girl. When you see him look at her with contempt, and that eye-rolling contempt, and his finger going up and down, and like he's just belittling her, that's an invitation for you to feel the same way about him. He's inviting you through his hideous behavior to look at him as an inhuman creature and project all of your own frustration and anger onto him. And I think that we just can't give in to that. And if we continue to just open our hearts and just work away from this process, who knows where it's going to go? Who knows what's going to happen? But how much is really in your influence? Your influence is very small. Each of us has a very small circle of actual influence. And that's my opinion. So,
yeah. So much of that way of speaking that, well, not the baby voice lady, but so many of those phrases and stuff have infiltrated myself. And some of the kind of shorthand terms are useful. I mean, self-care isn't that useful. It's super annoying. But I mean, as a concept, 100%. It's not a bad concept. To me, the weird thing, the infuriating and the weird thing with this moment is that when I look at the other side, I just see a mirror image of me.
mm-hmm.
I don't see I don't see quantitative I don't see like material differences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very confusing, because remember before, back in the normal times, when you were a Republican, you wanted low taxes, and you were anti-abortion, and you wanted a strong military. And when you were a Democrat, you wanted like public school unions and blue union jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those seemed like very clear-cut differences. Whereas now it's almost like both sides are like copying and mimicking each other, and they have the exact parallel worldview. And it's not quantifiably different. In fact, it's just a mirror image. And I don't know how to explain it, because I personally feel that a Harris administration is an existential threat, just as much as these ladies probably feel that Trump is an existential threat. Where I then go from that is, but I know I'm right. And I'm sorry, I just do. I just know, I just know. And I know that I am unburdened by what has been. You know what I mean? It's just, that's what it comes down to. Like, I don't think that, I don't think the liberal worldview is based in any wisdom. And not to say that I have wisdom, but I'm inching closer to it, at least. And it's a lifelong process. And when I'm 70, should I live that long, I'll probably look back on my 48-year-old self and be like, girl, you were silly as hell. But, it's a process, right? I don't think that liberalism allows for that wisdom to develop. So therefore, I'm comfortable very categorically saying these women are just flat out wrong.
When you say liberalism, what do you mean? Do you mean left leftism, or do you mean
I mean all of it.
liberal?
I mean liberal progressive, which includes left. I mean all of
Okay.
it. It's probably not a very precise or exact term, but lacking a better one without going on to a digression of like what exactly are the different definitions. That's what I would paint them with that brush. And I think that these women in particular stand out from the far left types, who I think are a little bit more honest, actually. Because I mean, you can I love to poke fun at all of their inconsistencies and their hypocrisies, like how they're all like, well, no, this is not therapy. Like, don't center yourself, and then they're like, but this is like therapy. Like, let's go get cocktails. I mean, it's really it's silly. They're silly. They're silly women. And I think it's hilarious, by the way, that the white women showed up the black women by getting way more people on the call, which is like a big no-no. They shouldn't be doing that. They should keep their numbers more modest because, otherwise they're making it all about the white
Well,
women
there's all
again.
those women to educate, though. I mean, they could flip it the other way, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's so
sure.
many to educate.
Like,
Yeah.
they had to go and outdo the black ladies. But that type, these are the type of girl that have been in every teen movie since the 80s. The hyper achieving, like goody two shoes, but like quite ambitious and ruthless deep down inside. I mean, this is a total stereotype. This girl has always existed, but now they've just adopted or been brainwashed or become believers in this dreadful ideology, and here we are. I mean,
well, and there's a lot more incentive for the white women to show up for something like this because, well, first of all, Kamala's not even black, is she? She's Indian.
No,
and
she's half Indian, half Jamaican.
She's Jamaican.
Oh, okay, okay.
But she's not African American.
And then the white women have been beaten over the head with this racist ideology for long enough that they are looking for a way. They're looking for absolution. Yeah. So this is a public way to pay your penance and get your ticket and take your your communion wafer. And
I want to say, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Deborah.
I just want to sit somewhere in the middle of what both of your positions, because I both don't want to lose seeing the individuality of any particular, person that's doing these things. And at the same time, I don't know if it's like appalled, like just watching the collective, like a thing just like fell over, a spell, like fell over everybody. And suddenly Kamala is Martin Luther King Jr. So there's just this bewilderment of like, how can I take some of these people seriously that they like, where's the discernment? And so like I both like don't want to be doing anything like, oh, all those people do whatever, and yet at the same time I am holding this like, what just happened, like this collective, all these like per the Statue of Liberty and Captain America, and I'm like,
and it needs to be said that also, especially for you guys, because you live in deep blue country, those women would 100% send you to a radio education camp tomorrow. They would show you no mercy, like at least that kindergarten teacher. I mean,
well,
it's
that's
not like
the thing. Yeah. But Deborah's thing about the spell is right on, because it does feel like a spell, but what the spell seems to be interacting with other people on this very superficial caricature level. And so the only way to break the spell is to not do the spell. You can call out the behavior, but refuse to find yourself wrapped into that way of thinking. Refuse to fall into that contempt-based interaction that you're invited to do 100 times a day right now, especially if you're online. Online is all about rage, and it's all about reacting to each other. And it's all about what Ninja Kitty said something really great here a little bit ago. About the guy with the wig. He says, yes, and when you do respond, he gets even more offended. The reason being is he wants to be outraged. So he does all he can to manifest it in others. And we end up doing that to each other because anger is cathartic and it feels really good. It's like, this feels like therapy. We just shit on a bunch of people. And we just talked about the way that we're supposed to talk about the thing that treats everybody like they are demographic categories. And we just said the thing that we needed to say. Oh, we feel so much better now. We just othered everybody all to bits and broke people into their identity pieces. And let's go get a Cosmopolitan now, or whatever. It's cathartic. It feels wonderful. It feels like release,
like shallowly cathartic.
Yeah, shallow catharsis. But it's the thing that feeds right back into that same system. It's like when, Yeah, yeah. If you want
Also-
something from someone, being accusatory towards them feels good in the moment, but it doesn't
Yes,
get you what you want.
that's a
It
very good
doesn't
point.
get you what you want.
I also
That's a
think that
very
people want, I mean, this is the thing about woke, is it a religion? You can get the sense people want to be inspired. I'm thinking back when I was like, Obama was the best, whatever. Like, people want to have uplifting. I mean, I haven't heard Kamala ever say anything that's inspiring, but like her identity is inspiring. But like, so I feel this hunger, like, meeting this hunger for people that want to be inspired. They want to be in community. They want to do stuff together. They want to feel like they're doing good stuff together.
Mhm.
Like, where do we channel this?
right,
I mean,
right,
we
right.
all go get in a religion. I don't know, right? But like, I want to see that part of the positive part of it. But like, it's kind of going over in this particular area.
It's fake
exactly what it
fellowship
is.
too. It's it's like shallow, superficial fake
Yeah.
fellowship.
Well, you know how like the right or like whatever you call them, the anti woke people on social media periodically go through these like spasms of infighting because there's like, oh well, there's the woke right, and I'm always like, well, actually, I really think about that a lot, and I kind of struggle with what side I fall on because actually I think that the social justice as it is, as in woke social justice is like a demonic inversion. Um, and what it does is it's like a parasite that feeds on our natural need for justice and community. And it puts that very powerful human force in service of an anti-social and anti-justice um, ideology that's solely looking for raw power.
Mhm.
So I don't have a problem with being with the people who are woke on the right because those are just what we used to call people who believed in fairness. And now we've gotten all these fancy new terms in that can just like, you know, you know, bedazzle us and make us forget and make us confused and make us put us back in our box. Um, but like fundamentally, I mean, even to give it its due, CRT woke ideology and its ideas of intersectional injustices. I mean, there is a tiny grain of truth to that. There is a truth to that.
Yeah.
These injustices did and do exist. But what it does is it kind of very cleverly, like with a sleight of hand, moves around the terms and literally it then casts a spell over these white liberals who've always been brought up to, and not just white, actually, all middle class liberals. There's plenty of like children, like well-to-do children of second generation Americans who go off to Ivy Leagues and come back with this nonsense.
Mhm.
But this need, because as a generation we've been raised with these stories of like the heroic actions of the civil rights movements and all this, and we want that for ourselves. We want that important, momentous, self-sacrificing challenges that allow us to prove ourselves to ourselves and to others in our community. So we fell right for it, and we just accepted the Kimberly Crenshaw definition, where actually, no, we should have just stuck with the basic definition, which is based in basic morality, which is fair is fair.
Mhm.
That's it. Fair is
Mhm.
fair.
Mhm.
And so if somebody is being a real douche and, bullying and ostracizing and tormenting people for their race and they get canceled, I'm not sorry about it. Okay. I mean, unless they're like super powerless, it doesn't matter at all. But like, I think I probably am a woke right person, I guess. But that's just because I think that the if we go too far down the like don't be woke at all, it's like, well, then you can end up in a place of like, well, it's almost like the libertarian detachment, like anything goes, like, it's not I still do believe in justice, I still do believe in fairness. I just don't believe in the woke version of it.
Mhm.
And it's something I think about a lot, and I have to work on it to kind of refine it to a point where it makes more sense. But that's all these people, as a collective generation, I think that's all we're looking for.
Yeah, there's a lot we could talk about. Maybe some other kind, just on the right and what is the woke right versus the dissident versus or whatever. Because it is, I think one piece I'll add about the woke, the label, because there's multiple things going on with it. One that I do see is the ones amongst those who do want to do identity politics. So they want to make white be a something. And like, that's the piece of it where I can see that being problematic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot. I think you're bringing up a really rich, interesting point, Jenny, and something that merits a lot more discussion. Maybe we can have a discussion about that and just dig into that at the outset and see what comes up. Because that's the woke right. And I love how you describe this polarity as being like mirror images. I'm still sitting with that metaphor because there's a lot of
But,
truth
like,
in that.
down to the most granular level. Like, we have our media inputs, they have their media inputs. We have our existential, kind of out this is a hill I'll die on issues, they have theirs. Like, mine is transing children, theirs is abortion. I mean, it
Also,
really we have our leaders and our intellectual sort of saviors. The right has theirs and the left has theirs, or the liberals have theirs. We're identical. We're just operating on binary tracks.
I don't identify with the right myself, so I'm not.
I don't either, but I mean,
Yeah.
everyone else would identify me with the right.
I just want to say one quick like mirror weirdness was watching till he kind of disappeared altogether, like watching Biden start getting Trump-like at the end and saying like I can do this and the media is terrible and all this stuff, and I was like, whoa, like he's becoming Trumpy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and what in the world, how did we just get did we just do like the cup game with Kamala and Biden, and isn't there like a whole primary process that needs to happen for her to be, and that was really, that's the whole thing is super weird. But yeah, Trump like. So I was hoping we'd have time for some viewer comments, so maybe we can save those for next week because it's already after 11 and we need to wrap up. But thank you both for this really, really interesting conversation and for digging into some of these bizarre dumpster fire, as Helena called them, news cycle tidbits with me. And thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Do either of you have any final thoughts that you feel like we didn't get to? Feel okay? All right. Good. All right. Well, everyone have a great week and we will see you next Monday.
Thanks.